Hello, friends, and welcome to Adventures in Pixieland. My name's Amy, and I'm an ordained minister, and we are in Bible study. We are in the NIV, and we are in the book of Second Chronicles, which is, remember, is written in the 500 BCE era. And biblical scholars think was written by the prophet Ezra, but they don't really know. It's certainly contemporary with Ezra, and it is at a fundamental point in the history of Judaism. They've been taken into diaspora, into Babylon, and these First and Second Chronicles is part of how they are remembering their cultural identity and the people who were important in that cultural identity before they were talking about their kings, their leaders, their origin story. Because that's how you keep your culture alive. So, the queen of Sheba visits Solomon. Second Chronicles, chapter 9. When the queen of Sheba heard of Solomon's fame, she came to Jerusalem to test him with hard questions. Arriving with a very great caravan with camels carrying spices, large quantities of gold, and precious stones, she came to Solomon and talked with him about all she had on her mind. Solomon answered all her questions. Nothing was too hard for him to explain to her. When the queen of Sheba saw the wisdom of Solomon, as well as the palace he had built, the food on his table, the seating of his officials, the attending servants in their robes, the cupbearers in their robes, and the burnt offerings he made at the the ascent by which he went up to the temple of the Lord, she was overwhelmed. So she was very impressed. She said to the king, "The report I heard in my own country about your achievements and your wisdom is true. But I did not believe what they said until I came and saw with my own eyes. Indeed, not even half the greatness of your wisdom was told to me. You have far exceeded the report I heard. How happy your men must be. How happy your officials who continually stand before you and hear your wisdom. Praise be to the Lord your God, who has delighted in you and placed you on his throne as king to rule for the Lord your God. Because of your love of your God for Israel and his desire to uphold them forever, he has made you a king over them to maintain justice and righteousness." Then she gave the king 120 talents, that is about 4.5 tons, or about 4 metric tons, of gold, large quantities of spices and precious stones. There had never been such spices as those the queen of Sheba gave to Solomon, or King Solomon, I should say. Then the men of Hiram and the men of Solomon brought gold from Ophir. They also brought algum wood, Algumwood. That's got a footnote of B, and that's probably Almug, Almug wood. So, and precious stones. The king used the algum wood to make steps for the temple of the Lord and for the royal palace, and to make harps and lyres for the musicians. Nothing like them had ever been seen in Judah. So very impressive quality to this wood. King Solomon gave Queen Sheba all she desired and asked for. He gave her more than she had brought to him. Then she left and returned with her retinue to her own country. So an exchange of goods and gifts. That's good. You've given me so much from your country. Here is the equivalent of that from mine, because, nation making and being at peace with another leader, a queen and a king. You're not looking for war. You're seeking peace. Okay. Solomon's splendor. The weight of the gold that Solomon received yearly was 666 talents. Yeah, you got that right. 666 talents. Which is about, let's got a footnote of C down here. It said that is about 25 tons or 23 metric tons, not including the revenues brought in by merchants and traders. Also, the kings of Arabia and the governors of the land brought gold and silver to Solomon. King Solomon made 200 large shields of hammered gold, 600 bekas, B-E-K-A-S, B-E-K-A-S. It's got a footnote of D. That is probably about 7.5 pounds or 3.5 kilograms of hammered gold went into each shield. He also made 300 small shields of hammered gold with 300 bekas. That's got a footnote of E. That's about 3.75 pounds or 1.7 kilograms of gold in each shield. The king put them in the palace of the forest of Lebanon. Then the king made a great throne inlaid with ivory and overlaid with pure gold. The throne had 6 steps, and a footstool of gold was attached to it. On both sides of the seat were armrests, with a lion standing beside each of them. 12 lions stood on the 6 steps, one on each side of the step. Nothing like it had ever been made for any other kingdom. All King Solomon's goblets were gold, and all the household articles in the palace of the forest of Lebanon were pure gold. Nothing was made of silver, because silver was considered of little value in Solomon's day. The king had a fleet of trading ships. Footnote of F. Hebrew of the ships that would go to Tarshish. That's a location. Tarshish. They exported turquoise from Tarshish. Okay, so the king had a fleet of trading ships manned by Hiram's men. So that's got a footnote of G. Also, Huram in Hebrew, which is just a variant of Hiram. Once every 3 years it returned. So one for 3 years. It's a long trek. Carrying gold, silver, and ivory, and apes and baboons. So they're clearly making a circuit, and apes and baboons would suggest they're somewhere in Asia or Africa. Africa being more likely, because the Mediterranean Sea does go, over to that general area. King Solomon was greater in riches and wisdom than all the other kings of the earth. All the kings of the earth sought audience with Solomon to hear the wisdom God had put in his heart. Year after year, everyone who came brought a gift, articles of silver and gold, and robes, weapons, and spices, and horses and mules. Solomon had 4,000 stalls of horses and chariots, and 12,000 horses, or charioteers. Yeah, I get you. And I know that's like, so remember that you need a certain number of horses to pull a chariot, and then you also need a certain number of people who are trained to be in a chariot, one that is steering the horses and one that is shooting the arrows to make it a mobile unit. And you should know that this is happening, and it would, this is about, I'm going to say about 3,200 BC. We're at right here. It would take them until what is, for the time of the writing of 2 Chronicles, to come up with a saddle and to be on the back of the horse while in war. Not that that's true in all countries, but it's true for this country. So, it's roughly 2,000 years to get on the back of the horse, which he kept in the chariot cities and also with him in Jerusalem. He ruled, because you think about the garage that you need to house these chariots and these horses. It's a lot. It's a very big horse farm. How many horse farms do you know of that have 12,000 horses in it? He ruled over all the kings from the river. Get footnote of I. That is the Euphrates, to the land of the Philistines as far as the border of Egypt. The king made silver as common in Jerusalem as stones, and cedar as plentiful as sycamore fig trees in the foothills. Solomon's horses were imported from Egypt. J, that is probably Muzur, Muzur, and that's in the region of Cilicia, Cili, or Cilicia, that's really what it is, Cilicia, 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 and from all other countries. Yeah, because in that region, Saudi Arabia, that's where Arabian horses came from. They were far more advanced with what they were doing with horses than what the Israeli people or the Egyptian people were doing. Just so you understand, they came up with saddles sooner. There are plenty of regions in which they came up with saddles very early instead of chariots first. So, I mean, it's sort of like a military warfare advancement between here and there, different regions. Solomon's death. As far as the other events of Solomon's reign, from the beginning to the end, are they not written? Are they not written in the records of Nathan the prophet, in the prophecy of Ahijah the Shilonite, and in the visions of Iddo the seer concerning Jeroboam son of Nebat? Solomon's reign in Jerusalem over all. Solomon reigned in Jerusalem over all Israel's 40 years. Then he rested with his fathers and was buried in the city of David with his father. And Rehoboam, his son, succeeded him as king. So, remember, this is also written from the priest's perspective. So now we're going to get to see what the priest's perspective is about Rehoboam. Because remember, Rehoboam asked two sets of people what he should do with the request. And the older people told them, give them what they need. Like, give them, lighten it, because it doesn't need to be so heavy. You guys aren't doing all these big building works. And they will worship you. They will love you. You'll be a great king to them. And his friends said, push him harder. And he went with that. And there was consequences. So how did the Levites feel about the choice that Rehoboam made that led to a permanent crack and there being two nations, Israel and Jerusalem, Judah and Israel, not one and the same? How do they feel about that? Because the Levites are stationed in either way. It's not like, the Levites over here don't recognize the Levites over there. To them, they're still one family. So, and quite frankly, in Judah, the Levites and the priests are safer when they tend to be over there in Israel. So, how do they feel? If you want to find out, you're going to need to come back for the next video, friends.